7 months ago, I moved to the UK and didn't know anything about the financial system here. In this video, I want to go over the different saving and investment strategies you can use in the UK, how I built my credit score from nothing to almost excellent in about 7 months, and my step-by-step framework for my personal finances, which you are free to copy. Hi, my name is Naomi, I live in London, and I started the Good Money community to make you feel good about money. So let's rewind back to 8 months ago. I was still in Amsterdam getting ready to pack up and move to London. And I didn't really know anything about the financial system here, so I needed to find a way to get to my goals in a different country. I knew that if I wanted to get to my goal of one day buying a house and saving up for retirement, perhaps even retiring early, I needed to know the ins and outs of the UK system as well. I read a ton of articles and blog posts to see how I could best invest my money and save my emergency fund so I wasn't losing any money. So to get started and to keep things simple, there were two things that I learned were crucial when moving to the UK. The first one is making use of what is called individual savings accounts or ISAs, and the second one is building a credit score. So first, let's look at ISAs and why ISAs should make up a good chunk of your personal finance situation. So the way to think about an individual savings account is just that these are different types of savings accounts that you can use to hold and grow your money in a tax-free way. Everyone in the UK has £20,000 to invest across these ISAs tax-free, and the gains that you make from that account are also tax-free. Now, there are 3 ISAs that I want to go over. There are more than 3 ISAs, but these 3 will really get you started, and that is the Lifetime ISA, the Stocks and Shares ISA, and a Cash ISA. Let's start off with the Lifetime ISA. This is an account in which you can put up to £4,000 a year, and the government will match whatever you've saved with an additional 25% tax-free. But this account can't just be used for anything. It has to be used for your first home or for retirement. Personally, I do not have a Lifetime ISA account because I live in London. And this Lifetime ISA account, if you want to use this towards the purchase of your first home, your home has to be under a certain amount of money, which in London is just not very feasible. In my opinion, I'm better off taking that £4,000 and putting it into one of the other 2 accounts to grow my money. So let's go to the other 2 accounts, one of which is a Cash ISA. And what is good about these Cash ISA accounts is that they usually offer a fixed interest rate over a certain amount of time. And the longer you are willing to part with your money and not touch it, the higher the interest rate is. This is where I personally hold some of my money, and I will get back to that in my step-by-step framework. But let's get to the last ISA account that I use, which is a Stocks and Shares ISA. And again, this is exactly what the name implies. You can invest into stocks and shares tax-free up to £20,000 a year, and the gains that you make on this amount of money are again tax-free. If we kind of look at these 3 types of accounts, the way I look at a Cash ISA versus a Stocks and Shares ISA is that a Cash ISA is a bit more conservative in the sense that you put your money away somewhere for a fixed interest rate, and you can usually take your money out whenever you want. For the Stocks and Shares ISA, this is a bit more risky because you are investing into stocks and shares. Now, I would never advise anyone to start investing in individual stocks, but into indexes instead, because these have historically shown the best return on your investment, especially if you're planning on investing for a long time, which is the case for me and hopefully also the case for anyone who invests. But admittedly, stocks and shares are more risky than just putting your money away in a high interest savings account. But that is not all that you should focus on in the UK. When you are new to the UK or you are new to personal finance and investing, it's good to know that the UK relies on credit scores. Now, in the Netherlands, this is something that I wasn't familiar with. A credit score does not exist. There is some type of registry for people who are in debt, but there is no real score attached to that index. So if you do not have consumer debt, you do not have a credit score. But here in the UK, kind of similar to the US system, a credit score is very important if you, for example, are looking to buy a house. Now, I knew this is one of the first things that I wanted to tackle because I have no credit history in the UK. Even though I am 32 years old, scrap that, I'm actually 33. Even though I'm 33 years old, I do not have a credit history because I previously did not make use of any credit in the UK. Someone the other day explained the credit score to me in a way that felt very easy to understand. He said it is basically your ability to keep time. And it sounds a bit weird, but let me get into it. A credit score is just a score between 550 and 610. And where you are on this scale determines the history of how good you are at keeping time. Now, you start at a low score and build your way up by doing things like using a little bit of your credit. And I say a little bit because that is the important thing here. One of the things I did was get a credit card as soon as possible and make sure that I would use a little bit of that credit limit each month and pay it back in full on time. So no minimum payments, no overdrafts, no personal loans, just using your credit card for up to 20 or 25% of the maximum credit limit. Now let's get back to the timekeeping. Using your credit card up to that 20 to 25% each month shows companies that keep your credit score that you are good because you pay it back in full. You make sure that you do not forget about payments or use your credit all the way to its limit. And over time, this builds up kind of a log of you and how you spend your money, how you use your credit, so that when you eventually come to a bank, when I'm ready to buy a house, the bank sees my credit history and sees that I've always been a conservative credit user. Now I must say, when I saw this for the first time, I felt a bit weird because why would people kind of force you into almost debt in order to show that you are a good debt keeper? Surely the best way is to not just have debt at all. I think this is something that the Netherlands does pretty well. Just not having a credit score and not being able to make minimum payments on credit means that way less people get into debt. But I mean, I chose to move to the UK, so I will play the game. But I just want to say this, when you start building up your credit, make sure that you are able to hold to these rules. In some cases, setting up a direct debit to pay it back in full on time can only be done over the phone, which is again something that baffles me. They make it really hard for you to be a good credit person. So be careful when doing this, but eventually building a credit score can be really important. Now, there are a few other do's and don'ts that I did in the last 7 months to grow my credit score. So next to just using my credit card each month and my credit score slowly creeping up from that whatever it was in the beginning to almost an excellent score right now, is sign onto the electoral register. This is kind of a registration of your address for government. And staying on the same address again kind of highlights you as a good and reliable person. So sign on to the electoral register as soon as you are able to, so you can build up an address history. Now, next to tips for growing your credit score, there are a few things you shouldn't do to make sure your credit score doesn't go back down. One of them I've already spoken about, which is not paying off your credit card balance in full each month. And another one is opening lots of bank accounts all at once. Make sure you leave a few months between opening bank accounts and you don't hop from bank to bank, because this will hurt your credit score. You'll be able to recover from this as long as you use your credit responsibly. But for instance, in my case, I had to open 3 accounts within the span of 7 months, and that definitely hurt my credit score. For me, in the long run, it's worth it because I use it for keep my finance separate. But I will make sure to not open another account in the next 5 months so my credit score can recover. So with that, let's get to the framework I used since moving here and how I built up a good and healthy personal financial picture. So first thing I did is open a bank account and open a credit card. Now, because you might not have a credit history, it might be hard for you to open a credit card. So shop around and see which one you can open. It's probably going to have a low maximum credit limit, but that's fine. It's just going to help you build your credit score little by little over time. In my case, my first credit card had a £2,000 limit, and I made sure to not use more than £400 a month, just so I could stay at a conservative level. And now 2 months ago, so this was 5 months after moving, I was able to ask for a credit card with a limit of £8,000. So you'll be able to increase your credit limit in no time, as long as you're a responsible credit user. I then made sure to register onto the electoral register with my address, and at the same time sold all my investments in the Netherlands because I couldn't hold on to that investment account. I had stuff in stocks and shares over there. I was paying tax on that, so I sold everything, put it in my Dutch bank account, and then transferred all of the money to my UK bank account using Wise. This is not a sponsor, but for me, shopping around and looking at what was the cheapest way of transferring that sum of money, Wise for me was the wisest move. I then quickly opened an investing account here in the UK because I didn't want that money just sitting in my account. Popular examples of investment platforms in the UK are Vanguard or Hargreaves Lansdown. It doesn't really matter with which you go. It is worth sometimes looking at the cost of the accounts and the products that you're investing into, but in my opinion, I hear a lot of people saying that one is better than the other, so I think both of them must be fine. Just to be clear, this investment that I put into the investment platform is in a stocks and shares ISA, so this counted towards this £20,000 yearly allowance that I have to invest and to save. Because I want to diversify a little bit, I also put some of my investments into a different trading platform, which is a bit more active. In my case, I use Trading 212, and I also put some money in cryptocurrency. All of this is not to say that this is my investment advice. I purely talk about what I do in my specific situation, so make sure you look into what makes sense for you. I then opened a second ISA account, which is a cash ISA account for my emergency fund. I put 6 months worth of expenses in a cash ISA, which gets a 5.2% interest rate. I just leave it to sit there for whenever something comes up that I haven't really accounted for. You'll never know when you'll need to rely on that emergency fund. Instead of leaving that emergency fund in my current account where inflation eats into it, I've put it in a high yield savings account. I then went on to tracking my expenses for 3 months. Because I'd moved to a different country, a different city, with different spending patterns, with different rent, I had to kind of get an idea of what my new budget would be. I gave myself 3 months. I put everything in an Excel spreadsheet and I kind of looked at which categories cost what kind of money, adjusted my budget, and went from there. If you'd like a template for the Excel sheet that I use, it's very simple and very manual. You can find that in the link in the description. And for anyone who's watching this and has never budgeted before, this is really something I can recommend because it usually takes a few months before you can really see what your spending patterns are. Based on that, you can see where your money is going and if that is in line with what is an optimal situation for you, and go from there. The next point was opening a new account. After this 3 months, I had a good idea of where my money was going, how much I was spending on stuff like food, going out, transportation. That sum of money I would then put in this second account each month so that I knew that that was all I had to spend. This keeps me from spending more from my current account than I want to, and it's just an easy shortcut for yourself to not really have to think about spending your money, but just looking at the balance and knowing that that is all you have. Last bonus point is to allocate my savings to my discretionary spending. For me, that keeps me motivated and keeps me on task to save. So what I do in this spreadsheet is I allocate whatever is left in my savings account to stuff I want to do. One example is a big trip that I want to do together with my partner at the end of this year, and seeing that number go up each month is a good motivator for me to spend less or to somehow allocate my money in a different way to save towards that. Now, you might be looking at this video and thinking, this is a long thing to do. I've never done any of these points before, and this is a lot of steps to take. But I do think it's useful to go through this step by step just to break down some bigger financial goals down the road. So personally, I would see myself buying a house in the future or retiring early or maybe both, and breaking down those numbers to step-by-step things each month or each week helps me stay on track. And it helps me to kind of figure out what is even possible. If I have this big goal of retiring early and I don't know what my numbers are, what I need to do month by month to get there, it's really something I will never start. But in my case, I came up with a plan and I'm trying to execute it month by month. And somehow it doesn't then feel like a big, daunting task. But you might be watching this and feel like you're behind somehow. So if that's the case, I have this video for you in which I talk about where you should be at what stage in terms of net worth and how you can go about thinking about that. For now, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.